the CEO of Storyplanet. What is Storyplanet?
It's a what we call a self-publishing platform. So it's a platform where you can upload your photos, your videos, your audio, and you can create and text as well, and you can create little interactive packages with navigation and interactivity basically, and publish them.
So I invited you to this conference because I found some very interesting talks from you in the net about the term digital storytelling. Can you briefly, just without taking something from your presentation up front, but what is the big issue about digital storytelling? Why do we need to talk about it?
I think the digital media as a platform gives us some really interesting possibilities that you don't have with existing media like print or broadcast. And mainly my big issue is the option of interactivity. So you can interact and let people choose different directions to the story, let them comment, let them get involved, let your viewers get involved. So that's the big difference.
So storytelling is nothing really new, but the digital part of it is new.
Yeah.
Is that right?
Yeah.
So it's yours.
Okay, thank you very much. I'm going to do it in English, even though I said I speak a little. Ich spreche ein bisschen Deutsch, aber nicht viel genug für keynote. So let's just start with a little movie. Actually, do we have sound here? It's not that fun without sound. Oh, here we go. So let's just start it over again.
J'étais embarqué dans un camion de livraison, et puis j'atterris ici. Oh, c'est incroyable. Hein? T'entends ça, chérie?
Bah oui, c'est fou.
So never underestimate the power of a really good story. The question is just, are we really using the power of the digital media with the stuff that we're doing at the moment? So I did this little, I'm just going to throw a few graphs in your head this morning, but after that we're going to get on to some more examples. But I did a little very non-scientific survey with just the companies that I've been involved with helping out with digital content and how they're actually using the online media. So of course everybody has a website these days and are doing traditional web pages with text and maybe a photo and video and so on. So that's a lot. Then a lot of companies are of course getting into social media and doing status updates on Facebook and Twitter and all these channels, and also one big chunk of what you could call social media is YouTube and Vimeo and those kind of things. So there's a lot of video production happening now. I actually way back had a company where we produced video communication. It was in 2005, and we had a really hard time convincing companies that they should use video, which is funny to think about now, 10 years later, but because now everybody wants video. And then of course there's things like newsletters, and then a lot of companies also taking existing materials, sales materials, marketing materials, and converting them to PDF and putting them online. And you probably know the flip magazines where you can flip through PDF pages. And then there's what I call interactive content, which I'm going to show you some examples of in a minute. But that's very little slice of the whole pie. And my claim is that if we're not really using that, then we're not using the power of storytelling, of digital storytelling. It's a pretty good start to be using all these online channels, but actually if you look at it, the status updates on Twitter and all these places creates a lot of traffic and buzz potentially right when you do it, but after a few hours it drops to nothing. And the same thing with the newsletters, and the videos and the web pages get also a lot of views. The problem with the interactive formats where you use a long time putting together something with multimedia and all these things is that right away it might not get as many views as somebody found the video. It might not get as many views right away, but if you look at it on a longer lifespan, actually the interactive formats overtake sort of the other things. Oh yes, sorry, I'm right in front. Yeah, okay, sorry, thanks. So over a longer lifespan, people get more engaged with interactive stories. They keep coming back. If you have a tweet or a Facebook update, people read it once and they don't see it anymore. And they might not remember it because there's such a huge stream of all this stuff. But if you do a really nice interactive story, then people come back and it actually it has a longer lifespan. It's kind of like with a newspaper article and a documentary movie. You know, a documentary movie can be out there for years, and maybe you only discover it after 5 years, but it's still there. But a newspaper article you read, and the next day you use it for wrapping your fish or something like that. If we look at it in terms of, so the next slide I have is viewing time compared to the total duration of the story. So it also shows that the interactive stories are actually much more what I call sticky. So people stick with them. The status update you just browse over because you have so much. The same thing with the email newsletters that you get into your inbox. It's really hard to get people engaged. But if you do the activity right, then you can actually engage people and let them hang on. So some of the stories that we're producing on Storyplanet, we actually, or not some, but all of them, we have an average stickiness of 50%. So people stay, if we do a story that's 10 minutes, people stay for 5 minutes, which is really amazing compared to a newspaper article or other kinds of media where you only stay for a few seconds or maybe a minute. So let's let me just run you through some examples of what I think about when I think about interactive stories. And I have sort of 3 categories that I divided them into. So the first category is what I call game stories. So it's stories with a kind of a gaming element to them. So this is one example. It's called Jennifer Live Concert. It's a YouTube project, and it's done by the French Federation for Blind People. And the idea is that you have to rescue a famous singer that gets kidnapped during a concert, and you have to really use your ears to do it. It's because, you know, they're trying to promote the cause of blind people, so they're trying to showcase how important hearing is. So the sound might not be optimal. It's better with headphones, but you can still see how it works here. Oh, now could we put sound on the PC? Ein bisschen Audio für... Danke. So then you have to use your ears to see where she went. So I apparently I'm not that good at this game because I went the wrong way, but.
Calme-toi, ma belle. J'ai tout préparé pour toi. On va le bien.
So I then have to use my ears to get into the door and press the same thing that he pressed before. That wasn't the wrong thing, or the right thing. Yeah, I managed to get in. So I'm just gonna hold it for now. A lot of things happen, and but the point is just you have to sort of solve different things as you go along, and then you get different directions through the story depending on how you do it. Another more simple example is this one called A Different Ending, also from YouTube. It's done by a British NGO who is working with lowering violence among young kids. So they're trying to teach them here why it's not a good idea to bring weapons out into the streets.
I'm not going to get away with it. You all right, mate? How's it going? You all right? Yeah. They shank sure. What do they think's going to happen? Go on, mate. It's going to go off tonight, big time.
So you can choose to take the knife, don't take the knife, and depending on what you choose, of course, you're going to have a different outcome in your story. And as you go along in the story, you get all these different choices. And a production, I mean, the other production I showed you, the Jennifer one, is a pretty big task to do. But this one is actually not production-wise that big a project. I mean, it's filmed first person with a video camera, and it's all done on YouTube. You can do it on Storyplanet as well if you want to. But so it's actually doable, these kinds of things. One last one I want to show you is this one called Spent, which is also an NGO, an American one, and they're trying to teach you what it means to be unemployed, basically. So I think one of the things that these interactive formats can do is to make you sort of feel and experience things in another way than if you're just viewing stuff, and that will give you a better understanding. So here you have to pretend that you're unemployed, and you have to make certain choices. So you have, for instance, to say, okay, do I want to take a temporary job, or do I want to take a really shitty job that's not temporary? And then you get different scenarios depending on what you do. You can choose to have health insurance, then it's gonna cost you so you can't get enough food, but on the other hand, if you don't have it, you might get sick, and then something else happens. And I think the interesting thing about this project is also that it's all, it's all text-based. So it's actually, I mean, in this case, used really nice graphics and text, so you don't have to actually you don't have to produce video or photos, or get into a huge production. In that sense, you can use some really nice design based on graphics and text and still make it interactive. So of course these 3 examples I showed you are not per se sort of branding and corporate, but if you think about it, you could use these scenarios for a lot of things. You, for instance, could do training of employees. So one of the projects I've been involved in is for a big Danish fashion company called IC Companies, and they have retail stores all over the world. And so far they've been training their young folks, the young staff in the stores with like a big paper manual, and they bring them into a seminar, and it's really not a very suited thing for people in a store that's young. They can't, consume that kind of media. So we're building actually a game where, just like you saw with the YouTube one, a customer comes into the store, and the employee has to decide, do I approach him or her, and how do I do it? And depending on how it's done, the likeliness of a sale goes up and down, so you have this parameter. So you can use it in things like that, but it could also be towards customers or others in demoing your product, for instance. So making them actually understand and feel the product by playing with different things and having different outcomes, instead of just doing traditional, here's my product. So the next category I want to show you is what I call multimedia stories. So stories that combines photos, video, audio. And this is a project we did with Storyplanet, again for IC Companies. And it's an internal magazine for employees.
We expect our business to double.
So we have these video pages. This is the one of the directors that are talking, and they launched a whole new sort of strategic plan last year, and they used this online magazine to communicate that to all their employees. So I think one of the advantages of the digital format, the online format, is that you can have a video, like I just showed you, like a full screen video, but you can also have a text page like this, which is more like a magazine. So you can combine movie and magazine and all these different things, and you can have graphics and all this. And then of course it makes it much easier to distribute it. So they have people all over the world, this company, so it's much easier for them to just send a link and you can click it and it opens this thing than distributing something printed. And of course they could just do it with a PDF, but then you wouldn't have quite the same sort of experience with videos that goes full screen and all that stuff. I mean, it's possible to do some of that with PDFs also, but it's not really an interactive format. Another example is this that Louis Vuitton is doing. Louis Vuitton is actually really good at using storytelling for branding themselves to customers. And I mean, it's a brand that sort of caters a lot to this. But this is a whole story about, they did a collaboration with a Japanese designer called Kusama. So they did a whole little sort of micro experience about this designer, just to sort of show the values of the designer and the work, and it's really nicely sort of packaged. It's a nice design, but it's also a combination of video and photos and text. And then you have Marc Jacobs talking about the designer. I don't think I got that, no. But there's an interview with Marc Jacobs that talks about the Japanese designer, and there's a little slideshow with images about the childhood of the designer and so on. It's quite nice. Then I have another example that's purely journalistic. I mean, my background is actually from journalism, but I think it becomes really interesting when you combine some of the stuff that's happening in media and journalism with some of the stuff that's happening in the branding, marketing, commercial world, because there's a lot of sort of crossovers and a lot of the same things apply both places. It's just slightly different executed, but I get a lot of inspiration from pure commercial projects when I do media projects, and the other way around. This is a documentary project that was done by the Film Board of Canada It's called Welcome to Pine Point, and it's about a little rural town in Canada called Pine Point. It's really about how life in rural Canada takes place. But what I like about this piece is that it has a lot of personality.
Mouse click. Tab. 579. Click. Mouse click. Backspace 10.
So again, you can see how they're combining photos and text and video. So I think one of the things that you can be inspired by if you're doing branding is that this story has, it has a clear identity and sort of personality with the audio and the way the look is put together. And I think sometimes the branding online becomes very generic. It becomes it lacks a little bit of personality. You don't know if you're looking at Nike or if you're looking at some other big brand. It has a tendency to look the same, and I think if you can infuse some more attitude and personality into it that matches, of course, your brand and your message, then you've achieved something that will make people pay attention to you and not the other guy. And I think some of the more artistic, journalistic projects can be a good inspiration for that. So some of these examples of multimedia, I think, can potentially be a good replacement for things like magazines. Company magazines, be it internal or external, or reports. I mean, it could be annual reports. Imagining doing an annual report a little bit like the Pine Point. I mean, of course, the look would be much different, but something where you could flip through and you had little collages of things. Maybe you had a graph of something and a little interview with the CEO explaining what happened through the year and things like that. I think that's a step way beyond what we've been doing with printed annual reports and with PDF exports and so on. And also just for presentations, instead of just doing the usual PowerPoint. Now, of course, I'm doing the usual PowerPoint, so it's maybe not a good example, but then the last category is what I call user-produced stories. And of course, that's a whole big area to discuss as well, this idea of having users participate in what you do. Because when we talk about interactivity, I mean, one form of interactivity is that you select ways through the story, you interact with the story, like I showed in the YouTube examples, where you can select to take the knife or don't. Another level is that you can comment on the story and share the story and so on. And then yet a third level is that you can actually start producing your own stories or mashing up existing things. And of course that's it's a big area, but I'm just going to show you a few examples of how it's being used. Again, one example from a totally different world than the branding marketing world is of course the Arab Revolution. But it was really fueled by all these tweets and YouTube videos and all that. And there was a couple of really interesting projects that sort of collected everything. One of them was called 18 Days in Egypt, and they built a little online platform where you could search on different things, and then it would pull in a stream of YouTube videos, and you could put together a little story. This is just a trailer for it, but
أنا والدي كنا هنا.
انا وولادي كنت هنا.
انا كنت فخور.
انا بالتحرير.
انا وعيلتي كلها كنا هنا وفخورين جدا باللي عملوه الشباب المصريين.
انا كنت على الفيسبوك.
انا كنت بصور.
انا كنت بتويت.
انا خدت صوره موبايلي تسجيل التاريخ.
ممكن نحكي قصتنا عن طريق اعلام نصنعه بايدينا ونصنعه بنفسنا.
هتفت مسلم ومسيحي ايد واحده.
أنا كنت على الكوبري يوم 28 جمعة الغضب وسط غاز المصير بالدموع.
يوم ال 18 لما مبارك اتنحى احتفلت وسجلت احتفالات الشعب.
قصتك تهمنا ودلوقتي في مكان ان انت تحكي لنا عنها.
أنت عشتها وسجلتها، يلا نكتب تاريخ بلادنا. شارك على 18daysinegypt.com.
نقول يا جماعه كلنا ايد واحده طلبنا.
So it's just a trailer, but I think what's interesting is the kind of people that are in there. It's not the kind of people you would think would be media journalists or producers, but it just shows, of course, you know, the Egypt revolution is an extreme example, and maybe a very perfect example of how you can get people to do stuff, but it shows some of the ingredients that you need to have people produce things. Like passion and, you know, something that you're passionate about. So if you're a car manufacturer, you know, I've seen projects where American car companies have tried to have people do little videos about the experience with the car. I'm not sure that's really enough. I mean, I think you have to take it to a higher level, so it should be like, you know, what is my vision of transportation? You know, should it be cars or flying? Or actually, I'm just brainstorming now. But you have to, you know, have something bigger, a bigger vision that you can get people into, and then it works really well. So I want to show you a little example, because you don't always have to like go out and have the general public do what I call user-generated content. You could also just use it as a project internally and use some of your internal resources. So 3 years ago I did a project with Saxo Bank, the bicycling team, during Tour de France. And we gave all the riders little cameras, little flip cams, and they did diaries every day, and we put it online, and it was actually a huge success because suddenly you saw a totally other kind of coverage that you got from the media that's, you know, doing interviews with them. This was the writer's own stories. And what happened was that Jens Vogt, the German writer, had a huge crash on one of the stages. And he after he got to the hospital, it was a big crisis, and people thought, you know, maybe he won't survive it. But he got to the hospital, and he woke up, and the first thing he did was to do a little video and put it on YouTube for his fans. And it had over 3 million views in a few days. Let me just show it.
Hey people, it's, well, I'm hard to recognize, but it's me, it's Jens, and I'm still alive. Maybe to the surprise of some people, but I'm still alive. Well, I guess I need some days of rest now, so there will be no party in Paris for me, which is a bummer. Probably also not the tour of Denmark, because since I had this head concussion and a little bleeding inside the head, I just need to recover a little and like take it easy, not raise the heart rate so much. So I guess no tour of Denmark for me.
So it goes on, but I just think it's adds such another dimension than if you had a reporter interview him. First of all, he didn't want reporters, and secondly, this was his own account. But inside a company, you can use it. You can have employees tell their own stories about their little job and so on. That's one way of using this in a similar way.
Hey people.
So one little extra example is not it's not really storytelling, but Starbucks did this thing called My Starbucks Idea, where people can put up ideas of how they think Starbucks should evolve their concept, and they actually received over 100,000 ideas, and they implemented a lot of them, like selling CDs with the music from the cafe and things like that. So I think using storytelling to sort of drive innovation for your company and your products is a really interesting new area that I'd like to see some more companies explore. So with this user-driven, you can replace some of the content production. I know some of you here are probably marketing and PR agencies, so I don't want to speak about replacing that sort of thing, but maybe as a PR or marketing company, you're a facilitator of a process. Rather than producing everything, you're actually facilitating that inside the companies, employees tell their own stories. So instead of sending in a crew of professional people with video cameras, you actually do some kind of process where employees have their own cameras and learn about storytelling. So it's actually also a pretext, you can say, for upgrading your entire organization. You teach them about media, marketing, how that works by putting them through a process where they do it themselves, and you connect each other. You connect the company throughout with these stories. Also, one area I think could be really interesting is instead of doing classical customer surveys where you ask, are you happy with this or blah, 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 then maybe you could somehow do a storytelling projects for customers where they could tell their experiences with your product. And through that pretext, you actually gain a lot of data and insight to how customers approach your product. It's kind of like what Starbucks is doing as well with the Starbucks ideas. So that's actually it for now. We have 10 minutes set aside for questions. I couldn't resist the urge of doing a little bit of promotion for myself on Storyplanet.com. So just to say, just like one little quick thing about Storyplanet is that it's a publishing platform that I said in the beginning, because I think one of the big challenges with all this is that it takes a lot of time and work and budget to do a lot of these things. Because you very quickly get into programming Flash and HTML and all these things. So I've been, in some of the projects I've been doing, I've been missing a really good tool to do these things where I could just drag and drop videos and audio and put buttons on there and so on. So that's what I've actually been creating with Storyplanet. And right now we're in closed beta, but you can sign up in there, or you can send an email to contact@storyplanet.com. and I'll get you an account.
Okay, thank you. Bjarke, yes. So during the last years, we had a lot of buzz about the social interactions as the new thing for the marketing. So, and now you said, well, social is not enough. You need digital storytelling, but this is quite a little bit complicated now. So on the one hand, first, it's a production issue. I have to have the facilities or resources to produce this kind of digital media, and then I still need to distribute it within the network. Or is this kind of message, this kind of digital story, being distributed by themselves because it's more emotional? Is this the key?
I mean, of course, if you can make something emotional and viral, it's always the best, but it's also really hard to do. And distribution is an issue. I mean, there's no really like just channels just done for this kind of content, but it ties into the whole social media feed. So of course, when you do an interactive storytelling piece, you tweet about it, you put it on Facebook, you do a little trailer and put it on YouTube, and you put it on your own website or blog, and you try to get, if it's really great done, then you can get a lot of bloggers and others to embed it on their own sites. So it's I think the main distribution is just a lot of different smaller channels that you send it through.
Just one last question, and then I will hand over the mic. I had for the preparation of this conference, I had an interview with Petra Sommer from Ketchum, and we were also discussing storytelling, which is a new format. This is more exciting as it's more emotional. But what about if everybody is doing this kind of digital storytelling? Is it still working afterwards?
Well, I don't know, of course. I mean, yeah, because everybody can't do something great. I mean, YouTube almost made everyone do video, but if you look at YouTube, there's an explosion of things, but it's only like 1% that you actually see. So the best things are always going to get to the surface, and the other things are just going to get to become noise.
Hello. How do you tackle the issues with network and network distribution? If someone is using that, he expects that everything is fast and flawless and easy, and people coming with iPhones, with Android phones, with iPads and whatever. And how do you see the planet, in your Storyplanet, the issue with performance?
Well, yeah, I mean, there's, of course, certain things we can't, I mean, we have to, we can't control the speed of the network where people are, but we can optimize, we can do a lot of things to optimize things. So with Storyplanet, we're automatically converting all video content into a streaming format that streams well, and it detects your speed, your connection speed, and works with that. But I think generally the technical development makes all these things easier and easier and easier. When I did my first storytelling project in 2002, it was a Flash project, and everybody was saying this is impossible, nobody can see this, and it was really hard. I mean, it took a patience to download, and I recently looked at it, and the entire file was 10 megabytes, the entire project. So today 10 megabytes would be nothing, and it's 10 years ago. So one good thing is that as time goes by, everybody gets faster connections and all these things. So time is solving it a little bit.
Yeah, but the bottom line is, if whatever you do is not fast enough for the end user, then it's bad.
Yeah, but fast enough is a relative term because it depends on what you have. If you have, if you're the only guy who has the footage of the American ambassador being killed in Lebanon, then people are willing to wait 10 minutes to see it.
Okay,
if it's something commodity.
For a commodity, for a company. Company is doing whatever they want to get more revenue, to get new customers, to get brand awareness. Then, of course, it needs to be very fast.
But I think you can get a little bit inspired by some of the online gaming things because they're really good at loading a little bit and showing you something sexy, and then while you're looking at that, it's loading in the background, and then you get to the next thing. But it's definitely an issue.
Which vertical would you say would be one of the top verticals, let's say within the next 1 or 2 years using that? Is this more commerce? Is this banking? Is this finance? What is it?
That's a really good question. I think the obvious one would be, like fashion and retail. I see a lot of, Louis Vuitton is doing some things. Nike is amazing, Adidas is pretty good. So some of these big sort of consumer clothing brands would probably be the obvious platform.
Hi, I'm Michael from Hotwire. How do you see alternate reality games, and do you have some experience with that? Because I think that's a major trend that's coming up on us, that also taps really strong into storytelling.
Personally, I'm a huge believer in it, and I think it's gonna, there's a huge potential there. I touched a little bit on it with some of these games here that I showed you. It's not really games, it's more like stories that you choose the direction in, but I think there's a big potential using these formats to teach people all kinds of stuff. Now, having said that, I'm not sure if that's what's going to be exploding, because I looked at all these things 10 years ago and said they had a big potential, and I thought they were going to be the next big thing in from 2000 to 2010, and it really didn't happen. I think mainly because of technical problems and production cost, like you were saying a little bit, technical problems with performance. But I think as you get better and better tools and better connection speeds and all that, it's going to lower the cost of production. So I do think that there's a big space for that going onwards.
Okay, if there are not any more questions, my last question would be, what would be your advice to people how to approach this topic. Going up front with a big project on storytelling and focus really, or really try out a little bit?
It would be more the latter. I think I would try to do something high quality but very minimal. So start out with a very limited little thing. I mean, maybe it's just like the YouTube different ending project where you, but you maybe just have 5 minutes of video and 3 choices as you go along. Or maybe it's just a text-based, really nicely graphical things, so you don't have to get into a huge production scenario. But start out very limited, but make it high quality. And then try out a lot of different things and find out what works for you, and then you can go bigger. And also try to think of projects where you can build additional things. So you start small, and then you just add more things as you go along.
So keeping the story open. At the end.
Yeah, that's one of the great things about the digital format also, that you can have open stories that you add new things to.
Okay, thank you, Bjarke. He's still here. Yes, one more applause.